It's English? Okay.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for your patience. We're in the process of voting, and it's great to see everybody. I know Speaker McCarthy probably feels very comfortable. This party made a mistake with COVID-19. Throughout the decades of communist oppression, generations of courageous Chinese patriots, including the dead, the disappeared, the imprisoned, and the exiled, have kept the light of liberty burning and sought to bring a brighter future to China. Today, we honor them and stand with those who continue the work to bring freedom to the Chinese people, including this incredible lineup of speakers we have here today. But it's not just those gathered here today with us. Congress stands with them. As we speak, the Congressional Executive Commission on China is holding its own commemoration hearing, building upon the incredible work they do to shed light on the CCP's human rights abuses and to support the victims. And today, on this 35th anniversary of Tiananmen Square, Congress sends a clear message. We stand with the victims of Tiananmen Square and all those currently facing the oppression of the Chinese Communist Party. And with that, I turn it over to the ranking member, Christian.
Thank you, Chair Molinar. Thank you to all of our members for coming. Thank you, Speaker Emerita Pelosi. Thank you, Speaker McCarthy, former Speaker McCarthy, for coming. Thank you to all of you. A philosopher once said, the secret to happiness is freedom, and the secret to freedom is courage. Today I brought a visual which is indelibly printed in our minds, and that is of the tank man. In Tiananmen Square, this man stood up to power, and many stood with him, including many of those who are present today. But people had a choice that day, either to stand with him or stand with the tank. And for far too long, too many people stood with the tank. And the tank represented the thuggish, brutal Chinese Communist Party, which sought to squash the freedom of this man and countless others, not only then, but today. Today, we have to remember that when Chairman Xi Jinping says he will, quote, crack down hard on subversion and separatist activities, and that he will crack down on enemy forces, he's telling the world that the CCP will send those tanks again against anyone that stands up for freedom, and he will deem his own people enemies of the state. We've seen this in Xinjiang. We've seen this in Tibet. We saw this last week in Hong Kong, where a man who was commemorating the Tiananmen Square massacre was thrown into jail because he was allegedly peddling in, quote, seditious content. And so today we say in one voice, in a bipartisan fashion, no more silence. No more silence about the Uyghur genocide in Xinjiang. No more silence about Tiananmen Square. No more silence about the cultural genocide happening in Tibet. No more silence about the political persecution that countless others are facing today in the People's Republic of China. Instead, we're going to stand for freedom. We're going to stand with anyone who does the same. So, Chairman Molinar, I want to say thank you today for commemorating Tiananmen Square and remembering the victims of Tiananmen Square. But today is not just about remembering, but it's also a call to action. And we're going to act in support of those who stand for freedom, not only in Tiananmen Square, but everywhere in the world. Thank you again. Now I'd like to bring up Speaker Emerita Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martha. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's wonderful to be here in strong bipartisan support in remembrance of what happened in Tiananmen Square. Your remarks, Mr. Chairman, were so clear, I suppose you as ranking member, Mr. Martha, about what happened that day. Just a couple things since then. A couple of years after Tiananmen Square, in a bipartisan fashion, some of us unfurled a banner in Tiananmen Square as representatives of the House of Representatives. Of course, we were driven from Tiananmen Square with very close, but even just unfurling that banner. But since then, we've always said we will never forget what happened that day. Imagine that these 1 million people perhaps in the square, and not just in Tiananmen Square, but all over, speaking out for democracy, for ending corruption, for having a new, fresh look at how they would go forward. The Chinese people wanted to go forward. There were those in the government who were sympathetic to them. They were soon out. They were soon out. We promised the mothers of Tiananmen Square that we worked very hard in order to free the prisoners in Tiananmen Square, those who were arrested, and also to honor those who gave their lives for democracy. Imagine tanks running over young people in the square. I mentioned that 2 years later we went to Tiananmen Square and filled the banner. But a few years after that we went, and you know what we found out? We found out that most of the students at the universities, because I visited the university, had no idea what that was. Was it an ad for Coca-Cola? In America, the man before the tank. They had tried to erase the memory of that courage. But you can't erase courage. It's the spirit. So as I say, when I am in China, and when I'm not in China, but when I'm talking about it, and I say it at the highest level where we as Americans must speak out for human rights in China, because if we don't, because of commercial reasons, we lose all moral authority to speak out about human rights any place in the world. This is a test of our resolve. And in a bipartisan, bicameral way, the Congress has stood the test. Whether it's about the plight of the Uyghurs or the destroying of the culture, the religion, the language of the Tibetans, whether it's the violation of rights of people across China. And again, it's about what's happening in Hong Kong. And just last week, pro-democracy advocates were prosecuted under the CCP's Article 23 in the latest example of their crackdown on rights and freedoms in Hong Kong. They talk about one country, two systems. And what they are is one country, one very, very violent system that is getting more so. So on this 35th anniversary, which will be tomorrow, of Tiananmen Square massacre, it is an honor to stand here with some that I've known since that Don Hepworth, who was a kid then, and he still looks like a kid, but nonetheless, a champion for democracy. I display with honor my Wei Cheng Award that I have received from Wei, and I nominated Wei for a Nobel Prize. It was that 25 years ago, I guess. And then other democracy champions were with us today. They are the ones with the courage. They are the ones who deserve our credit. And we must never forget, and that is our promise. And the other thing we want to know, make sure people know, is brutal governments, one of their worst forms of torture to people they have in jail is to say to them, nobody even knows you're here anymore. They don't even know why you're here. Why don't you just give it up and confess whatever they want them to confess to? Well, we want them to be sure that they are not forgotten. So many times, in a thoughtful way, Mr. Chairman, on the floor of the House, or on our visits to China, or when Chinese dignitaries, government officials come here, we're sure to give them the names, to speak the names again and again. So you'll be hearing from some of them, the true VIPs today, when we hear from our visiting champions of democracy. With that, it's my privilege now to yield to, is Kevin here? Oh, he is. Kevin, and I'm so proud that Kevin has a beautiful event that he has at the Reagan Library, a great prestigious institution in our country, where he welcomed the president of Taiwan as he has spoken out against China's aggression toward Taiwan. These are Kevin McCarthy. I yield to you.
Nancy, who ran the best election parliamentary coup on January 6th?
Thank you for being here. One thing I'd like to first start, I want to thank the bipartisan China Select Committee. I will tell you that let me begin. When I first became Speaker, I said to Hakeem Jeffries, I want to create a new committee. I want to tell you why I was creating that committee. I got the idea for the Select Committee on China actually walking at the 75th anniversary of Normandy with Speaker Pelosi to the gravesite. And I looked to see, thinking about what could the lawmakers have done, the policymakers then, that day never would have happened. And when I think back to my own personal life, 1989 was a very moving year for the entire world. In my early 20s, to watch a man that we do not know his name, but we know his action, to stand before a tank. And the picture does not do it justice, because if this picture would actually be in motion, when this tank moved, he moved. If it moved to the left, he moved to the left. If it moved to the right, he moved to the right. He had his bags in his hands, and he was willing to give his life. And we do not know his name because he did give his life. Innocent, with a lot of hundreds and thousands, possibly, other innocent Chinese in that day at Tiananmen Square, not far from the gate that's called the Heavenly Gate. That they rose with the idea of freedom and freedom of speech. And later that year in '89, we watched the complete opposite in East Berlin when the Berlin Wall came down. And here we are 35 years later. And we wonder around the world, will people look to this day? Hong Kong used to have ceremonies about what transpired on Tiananmen Square. Not now, as the CCP took more control. We will not see candles lit. But I want you to know this. It still burns brighter today. And you'll hear from a few of those that's behind me. But what I'm most proud of, and I want to thank those on the committee, not just for today, but how they have handled this committee day in and day out. It speaks volumes to the world where America stands. No question, between party, between majority or minority, where we stand about Tiananmen Square and where we stand about freedom around the world. And what will we stand up to? I'm proud of what they have done. I'm proud of the motion of what they're taking today. And most importantly, I'm proud that we will never hide from the fact that we'll stand with the man in the tank. We will honor him everywhere we go, until no longer will there be tanks in China after their own. You know, today I have the honor of introducing probably the most famous and one of the most courageous Chinese visitors. Wang Qingcheng is here with us today. He has an interpreter as well. But he has shown time and again what he's able to do, standing for freedom. Wei?
我们今天来纪念那个天安门民主运动35周年。其实这个运动影响非常广泛。上个世纪在中国发生了2次重大的运动，其思想都外溢到全世界。第一次是中国共产党主席毛泽东发动的文化大革命，他的暴力革命和极端马克思主义的理论，影响了全世界的暴力革命和恐怖主义，至今仍然是支撑恐怖主义的思想基础。另一次就是从1978年民主墙到1989年天安门的民主运动，其反马克思主义的思想与民主自由的追求，也在世界范围内产生了巨大的影响，并最终导致了苏联的垮台和东欧的民主化革命。我们相信，即将在中国发生的下一次运动，将结束中国共产党的专制政权，同时改变世界的政治格局，促进全球民主化的潮流，改变全球民主道德趋势，并且带来世界的和平。这需要我们大家的共同努力，因此国会这个委员会的作用将非常重要。这是能够改变人类命运的工作。谢谢大家，也谢谢前议长麦卡锡和这个南希·普洛西，谢谢委员会的2个主席。
This is a translation of Wei's speech. During the last century, there were 2 major political movements in China, and their ideas have been impactful on the rest of the world. The first was the counter-revolution, launched by Mao Zedong, chairman of the Chinese Communist Party. Its revolutionary idea based on the use of violence, coupled with Chinese Communist Party's extreme Marxist ideology, have inspired violent revolutions and terrorism around the globe. This idea remains ideological basis for supporting violence to this very day. The second was the pro-democracy movement, which began with the democracy war in 1978, culminated in a massive but peaceful protest in 1989 involving hundreds of Chinese cities that were violently put down by the CCP regime. The massacre in Beijing was televised to the world. Its ideas, anti-Marxism, pro-democracy, pro-liberal values, also had a huge impact on the world and eventually led to the collapse of the Soviet Union and the democratic revolution in Eastern Europe. The next ideological and revolutionary movement in China, we believe, will be able to change China's Communist Party's autocratic regime, alter the world's geopolitical landscape, promote the trend of global democratization, stop the current global democratic retreat, and bring lasting peace to the world. This will require an united effort from all of us. Hence, the role of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party will be critically important. This is the work that will alter the destiny of mankind. Thank you to you all, especially to Speaker Pelosi and Speaker McCarthy. Thank you.
Next, we'd like to invite Representative Amy Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, on June the 4th, 1989, I was only in 9th grade. But I remember watching on television in horror with the rest of the world as communist Chinese tanks rolled into Tiananmen Square to brutally repress peaceful Chinese pro-democracy protesters and bystanders alike. Chinese government troops opened fire on student-led pro-democracy protesters, resulting in hundreds, if not thousands, dead. Today we honor Wei and the other Chinese dissidents who join us, whose legacy in fighting for freedom and democracy is more relevant today than ever before. In Hong Kong, once a beacon of commemorative freedom, the massive June 4th annual vigil that mourned the victims for decades has now vanished, a casualty of the city's clampdown on dissidents following huge anti-government protests in 2019. And last week, under a new homegrown security law, Hong Kong police arrested 7 people on suspicion of alleged sedition over their posting of social media content about commemorating the Tiananmen crackdown. Last week, I joined a bipartisan delegation traveling to the democracy of Taiwan, where we were there to celebrate not just a successful election and the inauguration of a new self-governing democracy led by a new president in Taiwan, but we were there to celebrate a successful democracy and freedom on that island. And so as we commemorate the victims of Tiananmen, my message to my fellow Americans and to the Chinese people is that the victims of Tiananmen 35 years ago, their legacy is more relevant today than ever before. And their legacy stands as a tribute to the people of Taiwan today, the people in Hong Kong today, and the people in mainland China who continue to struggle and fight for freedom and democracy. And with that, I yield to another brave pro-democracy dissident, Wang Dan.
Today is the 35th anniversary of my nightmare, when thousands of my fellow countrymen and women were massacred for the simple act of wanting freedom and democracy. Human rights are the natural rights of all human beings. I believe Chinese people deserve these rights no less than any people on earth. Thank you, Honorable Chairman, and all the honorable members of Congress who have come here to remember this tragic day with us. I still remember vividly how shocked I was when I saw the Chinese Communist government deploying regular military troops to attack its own capital and to massacre its own people. I could hardly think, nor utter a single word. Since then, I have come to understand that the rule of the Chinese Communist Party could only be maintained by violence. This was the case in 1989, and it remains the case to this very day. We come here today to commemorate not only what happened in 1989, but also to recognize the political reality in 2024. Every person in free societies, including the United States, should know that the Chinese Communist Party is the enemy of freedom and democracy. Today, we commemorate not only China's lost opportunity for freedom and democracy, and we also want to alert others that the freedom and democracy of all humanity are threatened by the ambitions of the CCP. I was once deeply moved by Martin Luther King's famous speech, "I have a dream," and I have my own Chinese dream. I dream that one day the Chinese people will live in freedom and dignity. For 35 years, I have not forgotten this dream for a single day, nor have I ever spared any effort to realize this dream. At this very moment, we are here to remember all the students and the citizens who lost their lives on June 4th, 1989. And I call on all the world not to forget these courageous people. I call on the entire world to pay attention to those in China today who are being persecuted for the simple act of seeking democracy and human rights. I also urge that we all take practical action to help the Chinese people realize their dream of freedom and dignity. It is only when Chinese people achieve true democracy and human rights that we can be assured of a lasting world peace. Thank you.
Representative Seth Moore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to be here alongside this group of patriots who have dedicated their lives to promoting freedom for the Chinese people. 35 years ago, the world saw what the Chinese government did not want us to see. That even the most autocratic systems are no match for a few extraordinarily courageous souls. This was a story of a regime that feared its own people so much that they chose to hide behind guns and tanks. But the funny thing about the pursuit of freedom is that it's not even a match for the heaviest army. The anniversary we mark today reflects a fundamental truth that the fight for freedom in China has persisted from generation to generation, and it continues on. We see it when ordinary Chinese citizens holding up white sheets of paper, quietly but powerfully protesting the CCP's draconian COVID policies. and when whistleblowers bravely expose Uyghur genocide around the globe, even under the threat of transnational repression. These acts of defiance, inspired by the example of those who faced down tanks and gunfire in Tiananmen Square as they demonstrated for freedom, continue on today. As much as the CCP may not want to hide or deny it, they simply cannot. Not least because we see these images and read the stories with our own eyes on social media from intrepid independent journalists. And just like they couldn't hide what happened 3.5 decades ago, today the CCP cannot crush the basic human aspiration for a free life. Even as we speak, police in China and Hong Kong have tightened security because they know exactly what this anniversary represents to the Chinese people. I truly believe that Xi's greatest weakness isn't his economy or COVID, it's the will of the Chinese people. As we all know here in America, democracy can be messy. It plays out in the open for the world to see. But that's how it's supposed to work. That is how voices are heard and compromise is built. Autocrats mock our democracy and that messiness that comes with it. But they do so out of fear. Fear that their people will one day want the same freedoms. And when that happens, just like Tiananmen Square shows us, when enough people have the courage to speak out, change will come. Today I'm hopeful because generations upon generations of Chinese patriots have embraced the cause of freedom, and it will stay in that fight for as long as it takes. It's now my honor to introduce one of the most courageous of those patriots, Zhang Shuguang, a key leader of the Tiananmen Square student movement. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of Congress, I'm Zhang Shuguang, one of the witnesses and the survivors of the 1989 democracy movement in China and the massacre in Beijing. I'm honored that the House Senate Select Committee on the CCP invited me to participate in this event to commemorate the noble spirit and extraordinary courage of the brave people who sacrificed their lives and freedoms for freedoms and the dignity of humanity in 1989 on the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen massacre. 35 years ago, more than 200,000 PLA troops used machine guns and tanks in Beijing to massacre and suspecting young students and citizens who were peaceful protesting. The massacre claimed thousands of lives and put thousands of families into a bottomless abyss. The nationwide arrests and purges that followed changed the fates of countless families. 35 years later, the CCP controls the world's second largest economy. However, the truth about 89 democracy movement and the Tiananmen massacre is still taboo in China and cannot be talked about freely and openly. To understand contemporary China, we must look back at the scene of the CCP's crackdown on the pro-democracy movement 35 years ago, a crime that has never been punished. 5 months after the Beijing massacre, the Berlin Wall fell and the Cold War ended in Europe. However, for the CCP, the Cold War never ended. Today, Xi Jinping's regime is not starting a new Cold War. It is a continuous struggle between the CCP regime and the free world. The essence of the China challenge facing the United States is a challenge to human freedom and dignity from a totalitarian Stalinist party state. This struggle is both a struggle between the CCP and the people under its oppressive rule, who have no freedom of speech and political democracy, and the free world's competition with the CCP. Let's work together to win this fight. Thank you. Now I will introduce Congressman Carlos Hemans.
I told the former Speaker Kevin McCarthy I thought the best thing that he had done as Speaker was actually creation of this of the China Select Committee. And I was born in Cuba. My parents brought me and my sister here when I was 7 years old, and so what is happening in China is kind of personal, in that the people of China are suffering from the oppression, the suppression, the lack of democracy that is evident in all Marxist regimes. And the one thing about Marxist regimes that are common is that they fear their own people. Just think about that. You're in power only because you fear your own people, that you suppress your own people, that you intimidate your own people. And that's the only way that you're going to remain in power. And so for the United States, for the beacon of freedom and democracy, we must stand with the people of China. We must support their efforts to throw this regime and relegate it to the trash heap of history. I'm very proud to serve on this committee, and one of the reasons I'm very proud to serve on this committee is it's bipartisan. And in this era where really there's not much that Republicans and Democrats agree on, we agree on this, that China is an existential threat, not only to its own people, but to the world. And so we stand united in and our message to the people of China is that the United States Congress stands with you. We will support you. We will not abandon you. And we look forward to the day that China is a free and democratic nation. And with that, I will now introduce my colleague on the China Select Committee, Ro Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Jimenez. I stand united with my colleagues in recognizing the importance in the quest for freedom. And that is ultimately what this is about. America has always stood for the march of freedom, for the march of political rights. And I still believe that is inevitable around the world, including in China. And I believe that because of the human spirit. We see as countries become more liberal on social values. And I'm told that, now people in China have more say than who they can marry and what job they can do. And as people develop more economic power, that eventually freedom will prevail. And the United States will always be on the side of people who are seeking freedom. That has been the bipartisan commitment of this committee. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership.
Next, we'd like to invite Sophie Shengwan Luo.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. I'd like to go back in time to the year 2012. In 2012, my husband Lin Jiaxi, originally a commercial lawyer, joined legal scholar Xu Zhiyong to launch the New Citizen Movement. The movement encourages ordinary citizens to exercise civil and political rights, to confront injustice in society, and oppose human rights abuses in daily life. Their peaceful and lawful activities, however, have led Chinese authorities to arrest and sentence Xu Zhiyong to 4 years and Lin Jiaxi to 3.5 years in prison in 2014. After serving their sentences, both Xu Zhiyong and Lin Jiaxi resumed their activities in promoting civil, political, and human rights. They reached out to ordinary citizens throughout China who shared the same aspiration in promoting the growth of civil society. But in 2019 and early 2020, the police forcibly disappeared, severely tortured, and 4 years later secretly sentenced Ding Jiaxi and Xu Ziyong, under the charge of subversion of state power. This time, the court sentenced Xu Ziyong to 14 years imprisonment, and my husband Ding Jiaxi 12 years imprisonment. Subversion of state power is classified in Chinese law as endangering state security. Let's just think about this. Ordinary people gathering to discuss what it means to be a citizen according to Chinese own law is considered by Chinese government to be a security threat to state power. As the wife of a political prisoner, my thoughts are first and foremost with my husband. I worry constantly about the conditions of his imprisonment. Please, when you meet with Chinese officials or dignitaries, please raise my husband's name, Ding Jiaxi. Please ask them why Ding Jiaxi is imprisoned for advocating for human rights in China since 1989 until today. There are many ordinary citizens in China willing to advocate for their rights and take great risks to expose human rights abuses by the Chinese government. Although the road toward building robust civil society or a political movement is long and hard, I'm confident that ordinary Chinese citizens' deep desire for freedom and political rights will continue, but they do need the support of the U.S. Congress and the American people. After the Tiananmen massacre, Chinese activists received significant support from members of Congress, including Speaker Pelosi and Representative Chris, among many others. Your support can be seen in congressional hearings providing support to Chinese civil society groups outside China, calling for release of the wrongfully imprisoned activists in China, or supporting forums for Chinese, Uyghur, and Tibetan activists together and strategize for the future. We look forward to your continuing to standing with us and keep pressure on Chinese government as we are working towards a future democratic China without the Chinese Communist Party's one-party rule. Thank you.
I want to thank those brave activists who told their stories today, along with everyone who came to listen, letting the Chinese people know that they don't struggle alone. Before we go, I'd like to ask everyone to join me in a moment of silence for those who cannot be with us today, the countless victims of the CCP, those who lost their lives over the decades of communist tyranny, and those who remain in prison today. Thank you. And with that, I know we're out of time, but thank you for being part of this today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate this great team fighting for China.